There's so much I want to type about 1970s figures in a landscape directed by the stellar filmmaker Joseph Losey. I could describe it as a determined and swift adaptation of a well regarded novel from 1968, which Robert Shaw liked so much he penned a screenplay for it and starred in the subsequent film production. How Joseph Losey wound up helming this production, I am unsure, though this is at a time wherein every assignment he was given could be elevated, transformed into a filmic classic. Joseph Losey's sense of screen, his ability to transcend screenplays into highly striking film experiences, is nearly unparalleled in a traditional Hollywood basics school of filmmaking. One would be potentially stunned at the quality and dedication, care and craft shown to 1951's The Prowler, 1954's The Sleeping Tiger, 1957's Time Without Pity, or 1960's Concrete Jungle, aka The Criminal. During the 1960s, his best-known works, possibly, saw release, with Eva, These Are the Damned, The Servant, King and Country, Modesty Blaze, Accident, Boom, and even Secret Ceremony, standing as exemplars of the uniqueness which British films were capable of at one time. 1970 saw the emergence of Losey's most ambitious film yet, cinematographically, as a production in general perhaps, to date. One wonders if Steven Spielberg saw this film and was inspired to execute Duel in a certain way. I have read before, I believe, that Spielberg, or some other major filmmaker, maybe I am misremembering, was very fond of figures in a landscape upon its release. If he had, it certainly influenced the development, the eventual execution of Duel, a very strong classic horror thriller, better than it had much right to be, thanks to Spielberg's handling. Figures in a Landscape is blessed with the cinematography of Henry Alecan, a veteran who had worked on his most impressive productions at that time during the 1940s and in France. Clement's Battle of the Rails, also responsible for the stirring, unrelenting masterpiece that is Cocteau's 1946 Beauty and the Beast. Also, however, is credited cinematographer Guy Tabary, who apparently didn't work on much. The film must have needed multiple directors of photography, helicopter, aerial shots, ground, standard photography, easy to imagine this. But also a third credited cinematographer is the younger Peter Suchitsky. I never pronounced your name correctly, sir, I don't think. Almost 30 years old at that time, with rather few feature credits, later best known for shooting The Empire Strikes Back and some later 21st century Cronenberg. Peter received invaluable experience on the Figures in a Landscape production. Alecan actually, along with the now revered Suchitsky, worked on his most well-regarded films after Figures in a Landscape, for Alecan shot both The State of Things and Wings of Desire for Wenders, possibly the most hyped and lauded moments, certainly with Wings of Desire anyway, of his extensive photographic endeavour. In Figures in a Landscape, the film art is almost at its most pure, the reduction, or refinement, of cinema into what its title suggests, images at a distance which are compelling for their own sake, for the sake of what they are doing, not why they are doing it. The medium itself, the actions themselves, the motions and spectacles, become the point of the experience rather than some sweeping narrative which justifies the point of the player's presence. But most interestingly, possibly, is the insistence from the screenplay to explore the generational impasse between Shaw's character and McDowell's. The claim of causation or conflict between traditional masculinity and the epoch of the sexual revolution, the birth control pill is specifically named by the seemingly hypermasculine Shaw as a problem for the society at large, and the gradual revealing of Shaw's backstory as a man who was in love, desperately so, with his future wife, an older lady who had humiliated him as a younger lad, opening up a world of insecurity and attempts at self-worth which seemingly, apparently, inspire the rough and tough shells which are associated with old-school masculinity. McDowell's dapper and polite, possibly smarmy, sensitivity is fitting in just nicely, so he claims it, with the advent of the sexual revolution, and Shaw's character is bitter about this, because to him it threatens the possibility that McDowell's character could be considered more of a man than Shaw's, or at least has experienced more variety of pleasure than Shaw's. Perhaps Shaw's character thinks that if he were young in the 1960s, he'd be a real swinging playboy, but was born too early. Shaw is plausibly jealous that McDowell's character does not have to associate sexual escapades with the potential consequential responsibility, fatherhood traditionally, just recreational fun now. At the time, the film's focus on this angle maybe could have been seen as a topical novelty, although now it really highlights how dire and all-important the introduction of birth control was at that time, our generation of older parents, those who raised the baby boomers then, and the still living generations who had come of age all before they were horrified, or at least privately highly cautious of what the pill, what contraceptive devices would do to the psyche of the general societal population, or generationally as too. Would it discourage the conception of offspring? Would it downplay the importance of responsibility in the wider society? Would it just end up defiling everyone? Or maybe we ought just to be relieved and happy we can choose how many kids we raise and so can focus on taking care of as many as we expected or hoped to. Whatever one's perspective on that time and that sexual revolution, trivial and inevitable or a catastrophic gradual soft apocalypse, Figures in a Landscape addresses how serious and far-reaching the issue, the topic, was at that time, and how an extended interaction between an older male and a younger lad inevitably leads to this disagreement and a conflict at this time, certainly. Nowadays, it is common to cite baby boomers who were very sexually adventurous as being in great hypocritical judgment of their children acting inspired, partaking in their own bodily empowerment, but to Robert Shaw's character's generation, they never had the prior opportunity to be hypocrites, although the submerged tension is their not so surprising desire for it, whether to have been young during this time or to have many or multiple younger women to sleep with, no consequences of a childbirth 9 months on. It is a different kind of fear and hypocrisy, not that parents, older baby boomers, want their children to be superior avatars of their own younger lives, but that the parents of the baby boomers were scared and disappointed that they never received such all-encompassing and exciting, revolutionary privileges of youth. Figures in a Landscape is an arresting, highly involving, and extremely memorable film masterpiece. I know Barry Moore, a greatly valued commenter, has mentioned his fondness for Losey's films. I'd be very curious to hear his thoughts on this title. And also thanks to another commenter, of course, Abracious Productions, for not only inspiring me to rewatch this exemplary classic, but to compose a piece for it, which as likely as not, mostly unworthy, but although if I can inspire others to explore or to just check out, 1960s Figures in a Landscape, I'm more than happy. Have the best possible day, night you have ever imagined. Thanks again, my friends.